Hello and welcome to Dell's Gaming. I'm Dell and this is from the Depths Designer, and we're in a little bit of a lab area where I'm going to be looking in this episode at some more into the advanced cannons. In the last lab we looked at just basically how the cannons, the multiple barrels, rate of fire and those type of nice bits and pieces. Now we're going to have a look at, not an in-depth look, just some observations on ammo for the guns. Now I've set up a little bit of a test area. We're not going to go too in-depth on there, we're just going to go for a specific area first. Now, what we're going to look at first of all is going to be armor penetration and doing damage through armor, because most weapons we come across, or most ships we come across, will have some sort of armoring. Some more than others. You go against someone like the Onyx Watch and you're expecting a fair bit of armor. Some of the same with the Steel Striders. Some of the others less so. You know, some of the flying ships will have more alloy than metal, but you know, all the ships will have an armor of some description. So we want to have a look at how the guns fare against armored targets. So what we have at the moment is a little armored area for our testing purposes, and I've set up some guns of slightly different calibers just so we can test the armor and the size of armor and what we can do to improve, or what I'm finding is a good bad armor setup. So if we start with this first gun, which basically is, if we go up to the barrel, is a 15 centimeter 150mm gun. Now I chose this size as a possible size that could be used in large Gatling gun style, you know, multi-barrel designs. It's also somewhere in between your average small ship, you know, your destroyer sort of sized up to your cruiser sort of size ship. So I think somewhere between 10 to 20, a lot of people will be creating their cannons because you can get a good rate of fire and reasonable damage without being too large in your smaller sort of ships as such. Now we've got some basic armor here. Now I'm just going to change one thing. At the moment we have, these are all metal blocks, so we've got 2 thickness of metal block, and in all cases, as you can see down here, we've got a ammo barrel behind these areas, and I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger, just so we've got a slightly larger target. So we've got this ammo barrel which basically represents the inside. It could be the ammo storage, it could be AI, but it's a critical component we want to have destroyed. Now yeah, making it out of ammo barrels basically means that you know, we're going to see a nice big explosion, hopefully. That's always the aim, and I'm most probably just going to aim those up a little bit. We'll do those later. Yeah, so we've got something, we'll see a nice big explosion if we get a penetration. Now first of all, we'll look at the ammo we're going with. Now in most cases I'm going to do a 50-50 split on the ammo. Now what I mean by that is 50% will be gunpowder or propellant and 50% would be warhead for each of the shells. That's the intention, at least, anyway. Let me just change this down to the right size. So first of all, 15 centimeter gun, 150mm. Now we're going to start with a nice simple 1 meter ammo loader. We've got 2 of them there. In all of the cases we have 2, so we can shoot 2 shots. And we're going to start with 50% gunpowder and 50% HE. Now you can look on the values once you've set your shell diameter at how long it's going to take to reload and your explosion radius, how much explosive damage it's going to do. 562, fairly reasonable. Over 8 meters, quite a big area. You know, 3 HEs. Muzzle velocity 219, not very high, but good enough for sort of close medium range engagements. That will still go out, and you'd have quite a high rate of fire. So this wouldn't be an accurate gun, but it should do a fair bit of damage. Armor piercing 0.9. So this is an expected amount of armor piercing. Now I have to make sure that the gun, before I fire it, is loaded with the right ammo. So the way I'm doing that is going to be, I change the barrels to a different set of barrels, which reduces it and starts it reloading. And I hear a click, which means it's reloaded. Then I set it back to 1 again. Now I will be cutting that out of the videos, because when I get into the larger barrels, that can take up to 30 seconds to reload. Well, I can do nothing except for it to reload. See, it's now clicked and reloaded again. So on each time, once I've set the ammo, I'll take it up to the point of aiming and just cut to that position. So now that we are loaded with the right ammo, I'm going to select the gun. And we've got a nice aiming reticle, hopefully. And we're just going to aim slightly above, because this is actually one above the actual barrel, we actually need to aim one above, or at the top part of this block. So we're going to aim here with our HE and give it a shot. That possibly hit the wood, so we'll give it one more attempt. Okay, so that's pure HE. You can see just really surface explosions on that with this particular level. Not enough to really go through the metal as such, so somewhat limitation. So that's can't even get through one block of metal. Okay, so we've found that the HE does not penetrate the single metal. So what we can now do to our HE, or our shell, is add on different heads to the shell. Now the heads can only go on the front of the shell, and they provide certain attributes to that head, rather than just being a HE which immediately explodes on impact. So we're going to go through some of these. Now starting off, we've got the hollow point. Now, normally the hollow point basically does put a fair bit of kinetic energy onto the first part of a target it hits. So it's got a good sort of like surface damage potential, but lacks penetration. So by putting this on, our armor piercing has gone down, but it's got a good initial armor piercing value. It's a bit strange. It's almost like a fragmentation without actually being a frag warhead body, which is a separate item totally to look at. At the moment we are purely looking at HE. So the hollow point does like a surface version in some ways, almost like of a hollow point splitting up and doing a good amount of initial target. Now it is designed for unarmored targets, but it can have a good effect on low armored. Now one beam is fairly low armored, so if we just try this just for a second. So we're now loaded with the hollow point HE ammo, and if we give it a shot in the same spot, and you'll notice that has quite nicely penetrated. That initial damage is quite good. It's almost actually gone through and allowed the explosion through that first block, even though the block is still there, which is an interesting, I don't know if that's intended, but it seems to work quite well. We'll just try it one more time, because we have two shots, just to make sure it's not a fluke. So if I fire one more time, well, that one didn't go through. I may have hit the wooden block instead, but that one didn't quite go through as much. But you can see it does more damage than just the HE on its own. So not too bad. So generally 15 centimeter. If we want to we'll try one more head. If we want to try and sort of have a fairly much more guaranteed, a better option is to go for an APHE capped. Now, an APHE capped warhead, you'll see immediately gives you a good armor piercing bonus, up to 5. Our high explosive is still reasonably high. So that means it's going to give a good amount of armor piercing to that initial impact on the first level of the target. So we'll just give that a quick shot as well, just to show you what a bit of APHE will do. So this is APHE. I'm not calling it HEAP, I'm calling it APHE because it's armor piercing, high explosive. So armor piercing at the front, high explosive afterwards. So let's see how that does. And you notice good penetration, goes through the block, but the HE is still exploding on the surface, but it did go through that block quite nicely. If we just repair that up and just give one more shot just to show whether that was typical of what's going to happen. That one actually got all the way through, so some of the damage actually got all the way through on that one. So it does a good, fairly reliable penetrator. Didn't always go through to the items on the back, but is quite good damage potential. So to be honest, penetrating one piece of armor block isn't going to take too much with this size gun. So what we're going to do, first of all, is just make it 2. So we're going to up armor. Let's just say we're now going to go slightly more armored targets than we had before. So let's try that same. Now we know HE, that's not going to work on its own. It didn't even work with 1. The hollow points, unlikely to work on 2. They worked on 1, but I think that was more just some oddity of the removing that first block. But let's try our APHE first of all. So now you can see it's only penetrating. Oops, let me just turn off the repairs and fire that one more time. Yep, so you can see that that was fairly indicative. It's only penetrating the first layer of the armor of the metal blocks. So yeah, it's okay, but it's not really gonna be penetrating anything very soon. So let's just try, what other options have we got? Now the composite head, if we add that in, gives us a good amount of provides a more velocity, which gives us an initially good armor piercing value for that first level of hit, and would be good against the single level, which I should have checked, but we'll leave that for the moment. But is likely to fragment after that, which means it's unlikely to go much further than 1 if this is to go through. So, but we've got that initial high armor piercing value, so we'll give it a quick go. So this is our CompositeHE warhead. Good explosive factor, which must be due to that good initial armor piercing value from the composite warhead. So that's actually doing better than APHE, which is not what I would normally expect, going by the name and what seems to be what should be happening, but that's the way it seems to be working. Let me just let it repair itself. There we go. So we'll give it a one more shot just to make sure that's not a unusual result. So this time, okay, this time it did not penetrate the metal. So possibly the first one we were just at the mercy of the random number generator, because through all this testing, we do have to allow for the fact that random number generators will sometimes give us some weird results, and we just have to allow for that. So if we try another one, okay, so possibly that first shot was an aberration and just one of those lucky shots. It took out the damage and destroyed everything behind more from luck, which is as I would expect from this composite warhead. This is more I would more expect, in that most of the time it destroys the top block, but then after it doesn't penetrate much further, and that's what I would class as normal. So next we'll try a couple of other points just to try and get. Now one is the shaped charge. Now the shaped charge is quite a good little shell, but I find it better with the larger size, but we'll try it with this 15 centimeter. Now the idea of it is that when it hits the target, it converts all of the HE behind it into armor piercing value, and creates a very high, almost like Sabot like shot at the point of penetration. So as we can see here, the initial armor piercing is very, very low. That means it will explode when it touches anything. After that though, it has a penetration factor of 30.8, which is there is a square rooted version divided by 4, so you have to square root the actual value and then convert that into 4 AP. So without doing the whole question, will 30 penetrate 2 blocks of metal? I suppose that's our question at this moment. Let me just reload. So this is our heat round, which is, you know, some call it a heat round, a high explosive anti-tank, but we're just going to call it a shaped charge round. So shaped HE. Good penetration all the way through. Now, as we did before, I'm going to repair this, and we'll shoot again. Make sure everything is repaired even around the back. There we go, same blocks. And we'll give this another shot just to see whether it was a random number generator or whether it will do that more consistently. So, yep, that is consistently penetrating the 2 blocks of metal there, which is good to see. So that's a good sort of cheap round then for penetration. It gets through that nice penetrational type of through the armor quite nicely, to be able to penetrate through and do damage on the inside. Now, okay, we're going to look at a slightly more unusual head, which is the squashed head charge. Now, the squash head is a spalling style of explosive. The idea is that it explodes on the surface, but actually causes fragments on the back side of the armor to actually then hit the whatever is inside, soft components. So the squash head is a little strange, a little unusual head. As we can see, we've got some spalling metric, which is meters per armor class. So looking through this as such, the number of meters per armor class spalling. So we've got 15.4 meters per armor class. So we are actually up against here 20 meters of or 2 meters of armor class 10. So that's 20. So our armor class is not actually up to it. So I'm actually doubtful whether this will have very much effect. We might get 1 or 2 spalling points on the other side, but I'm not expecting very much at all on this particular size of shell. But let's give it a go. So this is a 15 centimeter squashed head. So no effect on the inside, no damage, Nothing looks... If something even got through, we'd have seen a lot of explosions on the side. We'll try one more shot just to see whether it is random bad numbers. Oh, we did get a random block seem to explode, but I think that was more HE from the surface getting a good effect there, but again nothing on the inside. So the squash head at this particular, and I think it's more of a the shell diameter at this particular shell size isn't great for our particular target. So what else have we left with? We are left with Sabot. Now Sabot is good in some ways. Sabot will give us a good kinetic. We see our armor piercing is already up to a version of 10, and if we were to change some of the body components, which is one way, we'll put another Sabot in there, which gives us a value of 14 we're up to. We'll just go pure Sabot. So we're now up to a 15.8 of armor piercing without changing our gunpowder values. Now I could, on this, what I would normally do is put another gunpowder in here, and we're up to an armor piercing of 22.7, which is, as far as I'm concerned, very good. And we've got a good kinetic damage here with 1800. So that's a good kinetic round in my view. So we'll give that a go against the 2 blocks of metal. So this is a 15 centimeter Sabot round. So, as expected, no big explosions. Took out one piece of metal, looks like it damaged the second, but it didn't go all the way through. We will, once again, just repair and try a second shot, just in case it was bad random number generator. That time did get through. So, that was a good penetration. So, which is more as I would expect. So we'll try it a third time to see which is the average expectation from this round. Okay, so this time just did the one block, damaged the one behind, but didn't penetrate. So good penetration, but certainly not guaranteed as such. Not as good as I would expect or would like for this particular round. I'd prefer a little bit more penetration. But certainly what we found is so far is the shape charge has worked really well. Now we can go for the other problem is if I go for a pure gunpowder charge, you can see how our optimal barrel length now has increased. Now this has increased to a 35 armor piercing value, and our kinetic damage is still quite high. So we're going to give this one go. This is the, for want of a better word, ultimate Sabot round that we could use on this size of shell, in my view. So we'll just try this one as well. Okay, so this is 15 centimeter Sabot head only. And still only hitting one block. We're only destroying one block of metal. Or again, we will shoot again, just to make sure it's not a random number generator aberration. Okay, that one penetrated. So the second shot penetrated, very similar to like it did with the Sabot body on this. It did penetrate, but not 100%. So third shot, just to see which is the average for us at the moment. And again, only one block being taken out, not penetrating. So it's good, but not a guaranteed hit. So my view is, at this moment, is for the smaller rounds, is certainly going for the shape charge warhead, and then some HE behind it. And don't worry about trying to be too accurate and just go in the area, we can try this with only a single. You could try it with a single gunpowder casing, but that does reduce your heat penetration possibility by having that less HE available. But it's the most potential round for going through. We'll just reload again. So just to see its potential, I've added a extra block of metal. So we are up to 3 blocks of metal with this shaped charge warhead. So let's give that a go for 15 centimeter shaped charge against 3 blocks of 3 beams of metal. Still quite nicely penetrating. So as you can see, that's got quite a nice penetrative value for us. So yep, that's a good round for this particular level, I believe. Okay, let's move on to a different size of shell. Okay, we're now at the second gun on this platform, which is again a 15 centimeter 150 millimeter gun, but we've now got a 2 meter ammo loader. Then what that means is we can put more complex ammo into our weapon. And we can look at some of the other potential components for our shell. Now, first of all, we've set 15 centimeter. You can see it needs a 2 meter shell because of the number of components we've got. You'll notice with the extra HE now, we've got a 9 meter and a much higher explosive, which is a little strange considering theoretically it's the same, but same diameter. But you could put this down to it's a slightly longer shell in the breech, even though the diameter is there, so it's a potentially higher velocity. The other items is that our barrel length is also needs to be longer, which we have increased it to get the maximum burn length. In this particular, because I've done 50%, our muzzle velocity is about the same. So we're still start with the same sort of system, but with the longer shell. So we've got 3 blocks of metal here starting off, and we have the same HE barrel, ammo barrels behind, acting as a target. So if anything does get through, it's going to go against these barrels. So let us just make sure that the HE is loaded. So this is 150 millimeter HE 2 meter shell. As expected, just really surface damage created on there. We'll do it one more time just to make sure that that's normal. Yeah, I mean, it took a few blocks out there, but generally that's just surface damage it's creating there. But now we can muck around with more options. Now, obviously we can go straight to the shaped charge. We won't worry about the hollow point because I believe that that's not going to be relevant to us here. The composite head, if we were to put a composite head on here, we get the 7.4, which has got a potential to go through, but it's unlikely to get through all 3 layers. I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to be reliable, since I don't think it was on the previous with 2 layers. So we'll go for the APHE, which when we compare it, is less chance of fragmentation, but we'll just see how that does as far as penetrative power goes on this particular target. So this is APHE 150 centimeter. So we've got just a single block penetration there, most of the HE just exploding on the surface, but we're not getting any more penetration than that single block at the moment. We'll fire one more time just to confirm that's would be normal for this. Yep, same sort of situation. Now what we can do, because we've got the longer shell, we've got a couple of options. One is we can increase the velocity of this shell to get a better AP and kinetic damage by putting more gunpowder on the back. Now we can only do this to a certain degree, and then we end up basically needing too long a barrel. You can see at the moment we already need 21 meters, which is, I believe, about where we are. So we're going to go that as a maximum, but it has reduced the amount of HE we now carry, but it has increased our armor piercing up to a good 10.8. So we're just going to see quickly how that affects our gun. Okay, so this is a high velocity APHE 150 centimeter, and that has pushed us through to 2 blocks of penetration. So if we were back on this and on this particular target, I'm sure we would be closer to penetrating. But we're just going to give it one more shot, see if it's what is the norm for this particular shell. Just one block on that time, so I think 1 or 2 is potentially what you could get out of that particular shell type, adding the velocity. But we have got more options now than that particular, just increasing the velocity. We can go for the shape charge, which we will try, but we've also got the squash head, which we didn't have much effect when we were against just a few blocks, but we're going to try it now. We've got this particular much thicker armor. Now we're going to do a very low velocity shell with the squash head. The squash head doesn't need velocity to let me just make sure I've got everything in there. Yeah, doesn't need velocity to impact except for accuracy. So here we've got a squash head which has got a 26.7 meters AC. Now on the previous one we only had 15 and we weren't getting much effect, so we're going to try a low velocity but a lot of HE in this. So if it does, the HE damage on this is a good 8 meters, is a good HE damage potential, but obviously we have lowered the velocity to make this, you know, a fairly short range shot as such. But we'll give this a quick load and test. So this is a 150mm low velocity squash head. So didn't penetrate through and didn't create any spalling, or not enough spalling to be able to impact the ammo barrels. We'll just give it one more test. So on that particular impact, there looks like there was a little bit of damage to something on the inside, but not very much, not enough to explode an ammo barrel, which are generally fairly fragile items. So the squash head really is not really running as effective as would be expected on this particular warhead. So we're just going to go back to a 50-50. There we go, that looks about right. Right, okay, so that's 50-50 now. Okay, so we had the shaped charge, which we did have work very well for us, and I'm pretty sure that would work very well again for us on this particular 3 blocks of armor. So we're just going to see just how effective this can be with a shaped charge warhead. We'll also just check the Sabot head as well, just to see with the extra velocity how much penetration we can get with a single armor piercing shell. But first of all, let's just go for this. No, we'll do the shaped charge last actually. We'll see how much penetration the shaped charge will give us. We're going to try the Sabot head with plenty of that amount 21 meters because of the amount of we've got as far as our gun barrel, and then we'll put Sabot heads on this. So we've got armor piercing of 32, kinetic damage 33,000. So that's 33,000, 3,300. So we're going to try this Sabot warhead as a high velocity Sabot. Now you could make this gun a lot longer to get that velocity up, but I don't want to go ridiculous amounts with this particular gun. So this is a high velocity 150mm Sabot, and that penetrated all the way through. So you can see adding that extra where it did not reliably do so with the shorter shell. So the extra velocity pushing that up to that next level has made this a much more reliable penetrator. We'll give it one more go just to make sure it's not just one of those random good roll of the dice. No, did it again. So that shows that that can be rather effective penetration. So that's a 32 armor piercing value. So that's piercing 3 blocks of armor very, very reliably. So okay, let's just see. Let's push it a little bit further, shall we? So I've pushed it up to 4 blocks of armor. Haven't changed the shell. Still that same high velocity, but it's 4 beams of armor now for this shell. So that's an armor piercing value of 32, I think it was. So 150mm. See, now that's slightly less now. Not getting through all the way through with that shot. So that seemed to give it some problems. We'll try again just in case it was the good old bad roll of the dice. Oh, that one got through. So we've had 1 penetration and 1 not. We'll give it another shot. See what is going to be the normal. Okay, that got through, looks like a couple of blocks. I think another one here is actually damaged. So it got through a few blocks. Seems to be partially damaging the rear. So yeah, it did get through once, but not reliably. I'm going to try it one more time, just as a test. And that one got through. So okay, 50-50. It's sort of penetrating as a high velocity. That's a good armor piercing shell as such. It's got just with sheer AP value, and it is getting through. It's one I would say recommend if you're doing a lot of shots, maybe in a Gatling gun. Okay, we have now got the one we haven't tried is the shaped charge. Where's that shaped charge gone? And we're going to put the HE back in. So this is going to be a lot of HE. So that's 5 blocks of HE, 1 shaped charge warhead, rest is gunpowder, velocity 220. So this is again not a massive range shot, accurate enough, but yes, we'll just check those values one more time. So our explosive damage 562, the main bit is heat penetration metric of 45. So that's 45 effectively on the penetration. So let's give that a quick go. So this is 150mm shape charged 2-meter shell against 4 blocks of 4 beams of metal. No problem. You can see the surface is almost undamaged, but it's just blown everything off of the back. So we'll just repair that all back up again and give it another shot, see if that is an aberration or not. I don't think that's an aberration. I think that's blowing through that just about every time. As you'll notice, each time, I think it is damaging these ones on the front, but it seems to be going through and taking out the next levels rather than... It's almost working the same as HESH, but in a slightly different way. The surface is still there, but it's taking it out at the back. Okay, let's push this up a level. What happens if we put another set of metal in front? So we're now up to 5 blocks of metal, 5 beams of metal, with this high explosive shaped charge shell. That's still penetrating. As we can see, went all the way through. Okay. Let's put another set then. So we are now up to 6 beams of metal to go through with our 150mm shaped charge. Okay, so 6 beams did not do the damage. Now, we've got some damaged beams in there. But not too much. It was more surface damage there. I think if it doesn't penetrate, it seems to do next to nothing. We'll try in case that was a bad roll. Once again, did plenty of surface damage, but no real penetration. So, but did go up to 5 blocks thick, which is very impressive. And to be frankly honest, most vehicles you'll come across will be mainly only about 3 or 4 blocks thick at best, to be frankly honest. So okay, what do we get there? Right, the higher velocity or the longer round did give us more options with the shell. We could get a better velocity and pack just sheerly more high explosive into this. The good penetration round is this shaped charge. The shaped charge, it's sort of expected. That's why they are so, in real world, they are so good. A shaped charge does very good explosive potential, but if it doesn't penetrate, it does very little damage. It only does very minimal surface damage. So you've got to make sure you are penetrating to do any sort of damage at all. Also, it did leave the surface still there, so you're going to be still exploding against it. It doesn't remove the surface, it just blows what's up inside. Other good parts about this was the Sabot round. The Sabot round at this was also a very good, reliable penetrator. Now, the difference with the Sabot round is high velocity, accurate, and it was removing surface blocks rather than relying on just doing internal damage. But it all depends what you want to go against. So the Sabot round was good, and APHE was also a better at this particular size of shell than it was with the 1 meter. But you're going to have to allow for the lower rate of fire if you go to this 2 meter shell. But yeah, it shows the penetration you can have. Okay, next gun. Okay, so we've got a 25 centimeter gun here. So we've moved it up a little bit to a 4 meter shell. And as you can see, we've got a lot of components here. Potential. We're starting with 5 meters, 5 metal beams of thickness. And we'll start with the first shell. And on this type of gun, you're not going to just use HE, but we will just try. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks of HE. So we've put it down to this 233 again. So you're not going to be. One thing you'll notice on here is the expected reload times are in 10-20 seconds, which is a hell of a lot of, not very quick at all. So we'll just try this HE just to show what the surface damage is like. So this is a 25 centimeter HE round, 4 meter shell. So just to show what the surface damage would be like. Yeah, fairly good, significant surface damage, blowing away blocks, sort of as you would expect. But, you know, that's a big old shell coming in there. Definitely good if you want to take out surface components as such, but not penetrating too much. Now we're going to try, because we've got so many blocks on this now, we are going to increase the velocity a bit, because you'd want to have this shooting at a reasonable range and reasonable accuracy, especially when you've got such a long reload time. You want to make sure this is hitting and hitting quite far out. So we're going to cut ourselves down to just 5 warhead items. Now what we can do when you've got this type of shell is do a bit of a mixture. So we can add a nice APHE, which has got us up to a nice 8.3, and then say add in a solid body. And a solid warhead body will increase our kinetic damage quite nicely. So if we go here, it's moved it from 2000 up to, whoops, just went a little too far. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, so we've now got an AP of 10 and our kinetic damage is 3000. We've still got a reasonable HE. And we're going to try and just push that up a little bit higher. Yeah, so 11 armor piercing of nearly 12, kinetic 3700, a reasonable HE. So this is a slightly armor piercing HE round. And in fact, that's set at the wrong value. Let me just change that to the right value. That looks a bit better. Do apologise on that. I forgotten to change this to 25 centimetre. So expected armor piercing 13. Kinetic 8800. That's better. Now that's the bit that's going to carry us through the metal blocks, hopefully. And we're just going to see how far it will get. So we just reload with those. So this is our 25 centimetre APHE round with a solid body. So now that's done. Oh, that's gone for a few good blocks there with some surface HE damage. So it's done a reasonable amount of damage there and penetration. So that's a good combined bit of a round there in my view. That's not too bad. We'll just repair that. We'll give it one more shot just to see if it was an aberration, see if we can get any better or worse. It's roughly the same. Whoops, roughly the same. That's sort of damaged about the same number of blocks. It takes a while to reload on this gun, so it takes a while to get the second shot in actually. Okay, so but still not really penetrating as much as we would like. So you could play around, certainly more than just having HE or just putting an AP head on a HE, adding the solid warhead. What we'll now look at is see if we can get, with the more HE we've got here, see if we can get something working with the HESH round. So if we find the HESH head, where are we? The squash head, there we go. Squash head round. Now we're going to fill in some HE on here. So we've lowered, let's see. Yeah, we've lowered our gunpowder a little bit, our velocity a little bit. Plenty of HE, so we've got a good HE, but we've got the squash head here as well. So we're going to see if that, with this size, can go through this 5 meters of armor and start some spalling on the inside. So this is a 25 centimeter squash head round. Looks like there was some damage on the inside here. Not enough, I don't think, to destroy anything, but we'll give it another shot, I think, on this. Yeah, definitely getting a little bit of spalling on the inside. but not a lot, I don't think, at this particular level. But we're going to try one other change. We'll take a little bit of armor off here, just to try the spalling effect. So we're going to go down to 4 blocks of armor and see if we can get some spalling effect to work for us. So there, yep, that's the spalling effect has had an effect there. You'll notice there's nothing actually damaged on the inside here, and on this side we've only had surface amounts of damage, but it was enough to blow the inside items off on the inside. So we'll just repair that and just give it a second shot, just to check whether that's normal. Okay, second HVAPHE 25 centimeter. Oh, that one didn't quite damage one, didn't quite get enough. We'll try it. We will try it one more time. Again, more damage to the inside, but not consistent. So it's certainly better. HVAPHE works better with the larger rounds, but it still is not consistent. Now we'll do the next one, which is a fairly obvious. We're going to increase the gunpowder a little bit, get our rate up here, and we're going to just use the shape charge, because we know the shape charge works well. So we're just going to confirm it, and we're going to put back the extra armor. So let me load and put that armor back. So this is a 25mm shape charge against 5 beams of armor. And that's fairly expected, actually. I think we were expecting something like that, to be frankly honest. The shape charge is very good. So okay, how can we defeat that? We know that the shape charge is going to work, and it works very well. Well, let's just simply put on a shield. So here we've just got a strength 10 shield, just pushed out a little bit from the front, a slight angle, not too much, but just in the way of us and the target. So let's now just have a look at what happens. So you can see there the explosion happened before the shield. I just need to increase the height of this shield, actually. There we go. To make sure sometimes the HE is going over the top and exploding it. So the shield made the impact at the very front of it. So we'll just show that again. So you can see that one more time. The explosion happened before. So basically our shape charge is not even impacting, making any damage on the front of the ship. It's purely getting held up by the HE. So although yes, great at penetration, just a simple shield is enough to defeat it. Right, now one other suggestion as a way to get around a shape charge is to create a spaced armor. So what I have created, or has been suggested, is you create a gap. So the idea in reality, in real life, is that it explodes here, creates its jet. When it reaches the open air part, it expands out and becomes less effective on the internal parts as it compared to the external. So we'll just give that a quick go as far as a test to see whether that would be effective at stopping the damage from a shape charge. And as you can see, no, wasn't really effective. And that's what I found. It doesn't really have that big an effect having a gap here. It may do on a HVAPHE charge, but a shaped charge, it doesn't seem to have any real benefit in stopping damage getting through. It's better to go for just have the solid and done with it, because it's not exactly like real life in some ways in that regard. Okay, so how can we now go back to the shield? How can we now at least get damage through? We want to get something which is effective against the shield and does some damage inside. That's where we can start using some of the more interesting components. Now, quite simply, to get through the shield, we need some penetration. So we can either go for, say, an APHE head, and let's say some solid warhead, maybe something like that. That gives us a bit of an AP, maybe to get through the shield. So let me just load this up and give this a go. So this is a 25 centimeter APHE against a shield. You can see that's still exploding on the surface. So we'll give it another shot just to see in case that was just a bad number generation. So you can see that's both times that's the HE component is still bursting against the shield. So what we all can add is a penetration depth fuse. So by adding the depth fuse and just even setting it at 1 meter, we're going to set it at 2 meters though, setting it at 2 meters would hopefully hold the HE off as long as it penetrates the shield. Now we've got two choices. We can stay with the AP, but what I'm actually going to go for is put a Sabot head on here to move that 11 armor piercing up to a much higher value. So that's up to 20, and we've still got 247. Let me just find, I want to check a put a Sabot body in. 20, 247. Yeah, that's put up our armor piercing without affecting our explosive. So you only get the explosive only reduced once by 25%, but we've got a good 23 armor piercing. So we should get that, and we've got the penetrating fuse as well. So we'll just load up that ammo. So this is a HE or Sabot HE 25 centimeter round against a shield. And I think we must have got a ricochet there, I'm guessing. So we'll fire again. Okay, so there we got a penetration and explosion on the inside. It went through a good couple of blocks on the inside before it exploded, which is good. So we got, obviously we're not going to get the penetration that we would from a shaped charge, but at least we're not totally wasted on the surface. If we went for a second shot, hopefully we've got a round loaded. We're not loaded yet, but our second and third shots hopefully would have a reasonable chance against this, as they may still ricochet on occasion. There we go, and you can see the explosions actually happening inside here. It's not happening at the surface, it's actually happening inside. So eventually we've gone through. I think our third shot would theoretically give us the explosion on the back, but we are doing damage through the shield. Or if we could, we'd be eventually take out the shield component to be able to, eventually take out the get to the insides enough, or stop the shield totally having an effect on our weapon. Oh, we got a ricochet on that particular one. Okay, so enough to show what the advantage there is of the penetration depth fuse. Now you could put an inertial fuse on here as well. So basically that means that as soon as it notices a change in angle, it will explode. So that would stop having any effect from the shield. But my view is that that's just going to explode on the surface of the shield, which means it's going to have no effect in the long run, because the shield's far enough away from the surface. What other little bits could you put in there? Frag warheads. Now frag warheads are very similar to your frag in a missile, in that it creates a number of shrapnel which can be, again, all directed in one direction. So we're just going to try that. So we're going to have the Sabot to get us through the armour, so through the shield, so that penetrates it, and then everything explodes after it gets through. And we'll leave one HE in there. So this is a combination frag and HE warhead shell. So 25cm frag HE. And that's gone through, did 2 blocks of damage and some surface damage. Similar to having the 2 HE, did reasonably. I didn't see a massive benefit over in this particular environment. I think it's still better to have just the double HE on there, but it did again have an effect in that it worked after it had gone through the shield. Okay. I think we'll call the testing at that particular point and just go through what we sort of learnt. Okay, some various bits. Lower gauge guns, 15cm with a short shell, can penetrate reasonably well, especially with the shaped charge, but the other shells do not have the velocity really. They do more use your high rate of fire to wear down the surface rather than having any one-shot kill potential really. But you know, it's cheap to manufacture and quick. Go your 15cm, so that's, you know, medium to small caliber, 2-meter shells. With the higher variety, obviously having the more HE with a shaped charge makes it a very good penetrator. You know, we penetrated a significant amount of metal just with a fairly small gun with the shaped charge. Also, putting it onto a good Sabot round gives us good penetration as well. So again, 2-meter shells gives you good options, but you have to allow for the lower rate of fire. Our 25cm, which I'm going to class as a fairly large gun, you know, 25cm is about, what's that, about 9, would be a 9-10 inch, which is almost battleship class guns. With the 4-meter shell, you've got quite a few options to produce. You can obviously go for the shaped charge, which, as we saw, it was penetrating significant amounts of metal, significant amounts of beams, so it's still a good option. But also we have now noticed, even, and this accounts for the other ones as well, a shield will simply block your shaped charge. So although shaped charges are very good, they're easily blocked by just having a simple shield. So having the more complex shell does allow us to create a combination, not with shaped charge, but at least be able to create something that will go through a shield and still do some explosive damage on the inside. Now you could create that with this shell as well, on the smaller 15cm. You could create a slightly less Sabot, convert that into a, you know, slightly less penetration, but still create a similar type of shell with that penetration fuse. So it's good, but you know, the larger caliber obviously does more damage, but the larger shell does give us more options to creating shells, and there is so many more options available here depending on what you're after. Everything from putting stabilizer bodies to get better accuracy. Now we didn't look at creating it for going for aircraft with flak warheads and proximity, because I had dealt with those previously a little bit, but previously we were more looking at penetration and damage in this particular environment. More appropriately, penetration. What do you need to penetrate shell? Now obviously when you're producing your particular gun, you can mix and match ammo. There's nothing to say that if you've got multiple guns on your ship, or even multiple loaders, they all have to be the same ammo. you could mix some shaped charge with some Sabot or CompositeHE, so that if the shields are down, your shaped charges are going to do significant amounts of internal damage. If the shields aren't down, then your Sabot rounds will still be able to penetrate and possibly take out the shield blocks, so that your shaped charge can then go and do the main damage against the vehicle. So you could mix and match, have a mixed, especially on higher rate fire guns, mixing ammo is a good potential, or at least has potential to maximize everything. But anyway, this is just going through some of the warheads and some of the options available, and there is so many possible combinations. I'm sure people will write how they've had this effectiveness, etc., and I don't disagree. There is the main bit is there is no one perfect round. I think it's all going to be so situational up against what you're against. Is there shields? Are there not shields? How thick is the armor? Is it metal, alloy, wood? There is so many combinations. There's not going to be one shell that does everything. Everything's going to be a combination, and you'll be able to find what works for you. Now, I do like the shape charge personally. I also like just simple APHE. An AP with a HE. I find it's good just if you've got a high rate of fire gun, for just basically taking out surface blocks one at a time or a few at a time until you're through to the center. It's good for making good damage. If you want that good one kill shot potential, I'm thinking the Sabot HE has got the biggest potential. It can penetrate shields, and it's got that little AP hit if it does get through to the inside, but it does require quite a complex shell, which means your rate of fire is going to be much lower, but it's got a good one kill potential to it. Other than that, yep, shape charge is good. HVAPHE, I haven't really got to work well where another shell would work just as effectively. As an example on this one here, shape charge would be more effective than the squash head in this thick armoured type of environment. Both have the same problem with shield, so there's no advantage, disadvantage there. And the squash head, is not. I don't see it giving that big an advantage, unfortunately, because of the shields. Pure Sabot rounds are good. They just, in a low rate of fire gun, they're good at penetrating, but you've got to make sure you are hitting something which is you're done damage. Railguns we will look at separately to see whether just putting pure AP into a railgun has an effect. But hopefully this has been interesting. It's if anything, to me, what it's proven is that anyone says, oh, there's only one way of doing this, I think you're wrong, because there is so many different possible enemies and there is so many different possible shells. It's very interesting in that there's no one perfect one, and people can do whatever they like, and just if it works for you, good, and go for it. But this is just given a basic rough overview of what you could look at and what you need to penetrate the different armors and the different values of the gun. Obviously I didn't look at 50cm guns because the 8 block shell isn't working. Once the 8 block loader is working, I might do a 50mm shell with significant number of shell components, just to see what is possible if you go completely and utterly mad. Because I am completely and utterly mad, so I might as well test it. But until next time, please click that like button, make sure that people and I know who is watching. But until next time, have fun.